Hello everyone. In this video, I will be going over three variable systems word problems. Okay, so our learning target is I can solve a three variable system word problem. So three variable system word problems are an awful lot like two variable system word problems where I don't really care which method you use to solve it. So you could use elimination, substitution, or Cramer's rule. The most difficult part would be coming up with your variables and creating your own equations. Okay, those aren't explicitly clear in these problems. I give you a paragraph, or I give you a sentence, or I give you some information, and you are responsible for coming up with the equations and then solving using whichever method you prefer from there. Okay, so I think the best way to go over how to do these types of problems is to look at a problem. So this problem, Mr. Flynn can often be found at Waterhouse Field running the scoreboard, video board, announcing, and playing music. At the end of each week, Mr. Walton and Mr. LeBrew pay him for his services. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Flynn earned a total of $280 after he worked 2 varsity games, 3 JV games, and 2 middle school games. Last week, he earned $170 after he worked 1 varsity game, 3 JV games, and 1 middle school game. This week, he will make $410 after working 4 varsity games, 1 JV game, and 3 middle school games. How much does Mr. Flynn make for 1 varsity game, JV game, and middle school game each? So as usual, what we want to start with is by defining some variables. Okay, so I am going to use V for varsity. I'll do J for JV, and M for middle school. Okay, so from here I can make 3 equations. So I'm going to have the equation for my first week. My second week. And my third week, which was the most recent week. Okay, so that was pretty clear how I'm going to get my 3 equations. 3 equations are going to be from 2 weeks ago, which was going to be the first week, last week, which was the second week, and the current week, which is going to be the third week. Okay, so now I'm going to take a look back at the paragraph for some information. So 2 weeks ago, I earned a total of $280. I worked 2 varsity games, so I'll have 2V. 3 JV games, plus 3J, and 2 middle school games, plus 2M, for a total of $280. So there would be my first equation. My second equation, I earned $170 after I worked 1 varsity game, so I could put 1V or just V. 3 JV games. And 1 middle school game. And the total again on that was $170. And for the third week, I earned $410 working 4 varsity games, 1 JV game, and 3 middle school games. Okay, so I have my 3 equations, so I'm going to zoom in, and I am going to start going through the elimination process to get rid of a variable to create a two variable system. So to do that, I'm going to use my first and second week, and I'm going to eliminate my j's. Okay, so I am going to multiply my bottom equation by -1. Okay, so when we do that, I'm just rewriting my top equation. It's not changing at all. And then my bottom equation is going to turn to -v minus 3j minus m equals -170. So I can now combine these two equations. When I do that, my j's are going to cancel. So I am left with 2v minus v, which is a positive v, 2m minus m, which is a positive m, and 280 minus 170, which is going to be 110. I'm going to put a star next to this because this is going to be one of my start equations that I'm going to hold on to for later, one of the equations that is part of my two variable system. So because I eliminated j using the first and the second week equations, I need to also eliminate j, so I have another two variable equation in terms of v and m. Then I will be able to solve that two variable system. So to do that, what I am going to do is I am going to multiply my bottom equation, or scale it, by -3. And I'm going to use the top equation and the bottom equation. So I have top and bottom. So my top equation is not changing at all. And my bottom equation is going to turn to a -12v minus 3j minus 9m equals -1,230. So now when I combine these, my j's are going to eliminate. I'm going to be left with -10v minus 7m equals -950. Okay, so I'm going to put a star next to this because this is going to be the other start equation that's going to create my two variable system. So now I'm just going to take these two equations, stack them on top of one another, and solve this two variable system. So I've got v plus m equals 110, and -10v minus 7m equals -950. So I'm going to eliminate, I'm going to choose my m's. So I need to make my top m a positive 7m. So to do that, I can scale by 7. So when I do that, scroll over a little bit, I will have 7v plus 7m equals 770. and my bottom equation is not changing at all. I still have negative 10v minus 7m equals negative 950. So I can eliminate my m's here because I've got a positive 7m and a negative 7m. 7v minus 10v is going to be a negative 3v. And 770 minus 950 is going to be a negative 180. So at this point I can divide both sides by negative 3. Negative 3's cancel on the left. So I'm left with v equals negative 180 divided by negative 3, which is a positive 60. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at that answer and see if it makes sense before I continue on with the rest of my work, because I would not, it would not be a good thing if I had a number here that didn't make any sense and I went through with the rest of the problem, because if this answer doesn't make sense, then the rest of my answers sure aren't going to make sense either. So the numbers that we have should be positive because we're talking about money. Okay, so for these games, what this is saying is that for a varsity game, I make $60, and though these numbers are fabricated a little bit, the idea that I should have a positive number remains the same. I'm not going to a game and paying admission, so that would be the only case where this number should be negative. So this makes sense right here. I should have a positive number, so that's a good first step so we can continue on with this process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my top start equation or my bottom start equation and plug 60 in for v. I am going to pick my, let's do the top star. So when we do that, I'm plugging it in for v up here, so I've got v plus m equals 110. Instead of v, I'm plugging in 60. And then the rest of my equation, plus m equals 110. From here I can subtract 60 on both sides. I do this. 60's cancel, and I am left with m equals 110 minus 60, which is a positive 50. Okay, so that also makes sense. I've got another positive number there. That's a good sign. So now what I can do is I can go back to one of my original equations, plug 60 in for v, 50 in for m, and solve for my j. So how about we do, let's do this middle equation, our second weak equation. So when I do that, instead of v, I have 60. Got my plus 3j. And then plus m. But instead of m, I'm writing 50. Equals 170. So what I can do here is I can combine my 60 and my 50. Then I'll bring my 3j down along for the ride. So when I do that, I've got a 3j plus 110 equals 170. I can subtract 110 on both sides. When I do that, 110s cancel on the left side, and I'm left with 3j equals 170 minus 110, which is going to be a positive 60. I can divide both sides by 3. When I do that, 3's cancel on the left, and I am left with j equals 60 divided by 3, which is going to be 20. Okay, so at this point I've solved for all 3 variables. Just to recap the process, I'll throw some arrows in here as well. I got my 2 start equations. Okay, once I got my 2 start equations, what I did is I set them up into a 2 variable system. Okay, we solved the 2 variable system and we got 60 for v. So we took this 60 and we plugged it into our top start equation, which was the v plus m equals 110. Okay, after we found this, our m, our next variable, meaning the 2 variable system was solved, we took this number and we plugged that into our middle original equation. So that allowed us to solve for our j, which was our last variable. So what this tells us, or what these numbers tell us, is that Mr. Flynn makes $60 for a varsity game, $20 for a JV game, and $50 for a middle school game. And again, these aren't real numbers. They are, even though this is how I figured out what I do make for varsity games, JV games, and middle school games, these numbers are made up. But a cool real-world application that I found I was able to use a 3 variable system word problem in everyday life to figure out some information that I didn't technically know. Okay, so at this point we have concluded the notes for 3 variable system word problems. You are ready for some practice. If you need any extra assistance or anything is unclear, per usual, make sure you come find me and I would be more than happy to help you out. Have a good day, everyone.